I'll freshen you up and make it all nice." When I happened to cross paths with a classmate, Kevin, at the year-end party, and he called out to me, I brushed him off and headed for my seat. Kevin then proceeded to pour his beer over my head from above. 3 of Kevin's cronies also started heckling me. I clenched my fists, barely containing my anger. "So, I'll just cleanly cancel that $100 million contract then." What? Saying that, I left the restaurant. After that, I made a certain call. As a result, Kevin's world came crashing down. His own actions had led him down the path to ruin. My name is Robert Smith, 35 years old. I run an apparel company. After years of experience in the apparel industry, I founded my own company, at the age of 27. Until things took off, I lived a life of poverty, juggling day jobs and part-time work, but now my company has grown to a respectable size and recognition. Working in a field I'm passionate about brings me immense satisfaction, and I enjoy my work every day. My father, also an entrepreneur in a different field, often gives me advice when I face challenges at work. Life was fulfilling until one day, an unexpected piece of news reached me. This news would entangle me in an unforeseen event. Ever since middle school, it had been my dream to start my own apparel brand. Thus, I went to a high school with a fashion design program and majored in business management in college to learn about entrepreneurship. During high school, I worked part-time at a clothing store and never neglected my studies, no matter the circumstances. My desire to own my own brand was greatly influenced by my grandfather. Originally, my grandfather ran a bespoke suit company. I admired my grandfather, who worked energetically, and as I grew, I aspired to own a company like him. Although he worked actively until 80, he has passed the reins to his right-hand man due to his advanced age. When I discussed my dream with my grandfather and father in my 3rd year of middle school, they were very supportive. Starting a company is fine, but you have to build it with your own efforts. Don't expect any help from us. We won't give you a single penny for it, but if you're willing to work hard, we'll support you. Both my grandfather and father had faced hardships in their youth to establish their businesses, so they encouraged me to persevere. They paid for my high school and college education as their parental duty, but true to their word, they didn't provide any financial assistance for my startup. Perhaps their tough love was what spurred me to work so hard. In high school, I juggled 2 part-time jobs at a clothing store and a convenience store, working tirelessly without any time for leisure. Kevin, a peer from middle and high school, often mocked me, saying, "Are you struggling with money? Poor you, maybe I should give you something." He also frequently pitied me for not being able to enjoy my youth. After graduating from university, I joined an apparel company to gain experience. There, I learned a great deal, and finally, at 27, I had saved enough money to start my own apparel brand. Initially, it was a small company of just 5 people, but over time, the team grew to 10, then 50, and now we have over 200 employees, with the company thriving under my leadership. Recently, our brand has gained recognition, attracting attention from various companies and experiencing a rapid rise in performance. Amid these fulfilling days, I received an invitation to a class reunion. It would be the first reunion in 17 years since our graduation. The date was still some time away, and it seemed manageable, so I marked my attendance and sent back the RSVP. 2 months later, the day of the reunion arrived. I was unusually excited from the morning, causing my colleagues to remark, "Mr. Smith, you seem even happier than usual today." I finished work on time and headed to the hotel, the venue for the reunion. Upon arrival, I found everyone already gathered, forming groups and enjoying a lively atmosphere. Lost in nostalgia, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I saw an old friend from middle school. We spent some time reminiscing about the old days until I was approached again. When I looked towards the voice, I saw an unfamiliar man standing there. Wondering who he could be, he said, "Don't recognize me. It's Kevin. It's been since high school, right? You still have that poor look on your face." It was Kevin, who had always mocked me during middle and high school. He had changed so much that I hadn't recognized him. "Wow, long time no see. Kevin, you've changed a lot. Back in the day, Kevin used to dress rather modestly, but now he was decked out in high-end brands from head to toe, dripping in jewelry, looking like a nouveau riche." "Oh, it's nothing special. By the way, what kind of work are you guys doing?" When a classmate mentioned working at an auto repair shop, Kevin started mocking him with a sneer. "An auto repair shop? Sounds like you're making peanuts. Can you even live on that?" It seemed his habit of belittling people hadn't changed since middle school. After making fun of our classmate for a while, Kevin turned his attention to my job. "I work in apparel." It was just as I was about to speak. I was cut off mid-sentence when Kevin interrupted. "No way, apparel. Are you still working as part-timer? Not having a proper job at 35? That's terrible. You're done for." He laughed mockingly, clutching his stomach. Irritated by his mockery, I asked, "And what about you, Kevin? What do you do?" With a smug look, Kevin boasted, "I don't really need to work, but I'm an executive at Company Y." Company Y? Company Y is so well known that it's safe to say everyone has heard of it. I'm quite familiar with the company myself. Perhaps pleased by our surprise upon hearing the company's name, Kevin, without being asked, began to talk about himself. From what he shared, it seems Kevin married the daughter of the president of Company Y. He hasn't become a son-in-law, as his surname hasn't changed. After marrying his wife, he resigned from his previous job and became an executive at Company Y. It seems like a classic case of getting the job through connections. My wife is the vice president, and she covers all our living expenses, so I don't really need to work. I just do it to pass the time. No matter how much I spend, money just keeps flowing like water," Kevin bragged proudly. We had been putting up with his boasting, but eventually found it too annoying and decided to leave Kevin. "Wait, I'm not done talking." Kevin tried to hold us back, so I replied dryly, "Enough already. How envious." This response seemed to upset him, as he suddenly turned red with anger and shouted, "A lowlife who can only do part-time shouldn't mock me. Don't get cocky, you poor loser." Perhaps due to the alcohol, his rant became incoherent, and he left the venue shouting about how he couldn't talk with poor people. According to other classmates, Kevin had been boasting about his wife and company to everyone, and they all found him annoying. With Kevin gone, we were able to enjoy the reunion. A few weeks after the reunion, during the year-end party season, my company's parties were starting. Given the large number of employees, it was customary for each department to have its own party, and as the president, I had to attend all of them. Today was the sales department's turn, and I was scheduled to attend. However, I had an appointment with a client earlier in the day and planned to join the party afterward. I managed to finish the appointment just before 9 p.m. and hurried to the bar where the party was being held. As I was heading towards the reserved room at the back of the bar, "Hut, isn't that Robert?" "It is Robert. What are you doing here?" It was Kevin, who must have been sitting at a table, calling out to me. I couldn't believe we'd run into each other here. I greeted him casually, despite my surprise. Kevin then stood up, slung his arm around my shoulder, and said, "Why are you wearing a suit if you're just a part-timer? Let me introduce you guys. This is my classmate, but he's still just a part-timer. Crazy, right?" He began to mockingly introduce me to his drinking buddies, who seemed to be his cronies. They followed Kevin's lead and started mocking me as well. Annoyed, I knew better than to engage with drunkards. "Sorry, I'm in a hurry," I said, trying to leave Kevin's table. "You've always reeked of poverty." With a sneer, He said, "Let me freshen you up and clean you up," and then he poured the beer from his stein over my head. I was taken aback by the sudden turn of events, but the jeers from Kevin's cronies led to me being doused in beer not just once, but several times. As a result, I ended up completely soaked in beer. "Now you're rid of that poor smell. You should be thankful to me," Kevin said with a triumphant look. Even I had my limits, and this incident made me decide to seek revenge on Kevin. "So, I'll just cleanly cancel that $100 million deal then." "What?" I said to Kevin before turning back the way I had come and leaving the bar. I only informed the sales manager, apologizing that the appointment was running long and I couldn't make it to the year-end party, and then I immediately made a certain phone call. A few days after the beer dousing incident, I was summoned by someone and went to their company. At the reception, I gave the company name and was then led straight to the president's office. Upon entering, I was greeted by a man in his 60s and a woman in her 30s. "President Johnson, I apologize for the sudden trouble the other day." As I apologized, President Johnson said, "No, it is we who should be deeply sorry. Thank you for coming all this way today. This is my daughter, Emily." He introduced the woman to me. "Thank you for taking the time to come today. I deeply apologize for the other day. On behalf of the person involved, I offer my apologies. Emily is apologizing deeply to me." I found myself apologizing in turn, and for a while, the three of us were caught in a loop of apologies. After we had all apologized to each other, we got straight to the point. "Regarding the incident the other day, we conducted an investigation immediately after you contacted us. We could hardly believe it. It's truly embarrassing." The two of them seemed so remorseful that I felt guilty by association. "President Smith, in the course of our investigation, we discovered something. Is it all right for me to hear it?" I asked, and President Johnson replied, "We wanted you to hear it too, which is why we invited you here today." With that, President Johnson and Emily revealed a certain truth to me. As the three of us talked, there was a knock at the president's office door. Emily opened the door, and a familiar face appeared. It was Kevin and his trio of cronies who had arrived. Not only Kevin, but his cronies too were visibly shocked to see me there. "Why are you here?" As Kevin said this, Emily replied in a cool tone, "He's the president of one of our business partners, so it's not strange for him to be here. It's pathetic that you don't even know the face of a business partner's president. But who would have thought that President Smith and you were classmates?" At this, Kevin and his cronies turned pale and could only utter, "I thought you were incompetent, but this is just pitiful." President Johnson began to hold his head in his hands. "I mentioned it the other day, didn't I, about settling a $100 million deal. I came here today to wipe the slate clean." As I said this, Kevin replied, You said something like that the other day, but you're just a part-time worker at a clothing store, aren't you?" Interrupting him, President Johnson slammed his desk and stood up. "You really know nothing at all. President Smith is the head of the rapidly growing oury. You must have heard of it, haven't you? Or, as in, the apparel company that accounts for most of our products." Kevin, now pale, managed to say that, and Emily sharply retorted, "Yes, exactly. Without ours business, our company would surely face bankruptcy. And what have you done to the president of that company?" Emily glared at Kevin and his cronies with piercing eyes. The four of them froze, as if paralyzed by a snake's gaze. "Everything you did to President Smith has been relayed to us, so don't think you can talk your way out of this. In fact, the company I was at was Company Y." Emily, who had been assisting President Johnson, was the vice president of Company Y and Kevin's wife. My company had been doing business with Company Y for about 2 years, and our products made up 70% of their merchandise. When I heard Company Y at the reunion and that Kevin had married the vice president, I didn't believe he would take me seriously if I said I was a president, so I didn't mention it. But after the beer incident, my patience ran out, and I called President Johnson of Company Y to say, I just had beer poured over my head by your employee Kevin. I cannot do business with a company that employs such people, and I explained what happened at the bar. Initially skeptical, President Johnson, fearing the loss of the contract, promised to investigate immediately and hung up. And then, a few days later, President Johnson called to apologize after conducting an investigation. It turns out that on that day, it was actually Kevin's year-end party, and there were several other employees present besides Kevin and his cronies. President Johnson immediately conducted interviews with the party members, and it was revealed that several employees had witnessed me being doused in beer. This led to my being summoned to the company today for an apology based on the findings of the investigation. Upon hearing this, Kevin and his cronies began to tremble, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of their situation. Your actions could have destroyed this company. What were you thinking? This company has been in my family since my grandfather's time, and now it's at risk because of your foolish behavior. Emily yelled at Kevin and his group. I didn't know. If I had known that Robert was President Smith, our business partner. Kevin attempted to excuse himself. Whether you knew or not, pouring beer on someone is inexcusable. To think we have such an unreasonable person in our family is embarrassing. President Johnson interjected with a flushed face, causing Kevin to immediately fall silent. And it's not just this incident, is it? You've been doing whatever you please, thinking I wouldn't find out. Enough is enough. Emily then placed a bundle of items on the desk, revealing further truths to Kevin. What Emily slammed down was a stack of receipts, numbering in the dozens. Why do you have these? Kevin's face went from pale to ashen. Personal dining, luxury items. You've been claiming them as business expenses. You lied to accounting, saying you had my approval. When did I supposedly give you permission? When Emily asked him, Kevin seemed unable to find a response, his eyes darting around. Before Kevin and his group arrived, I had heard from Emily and President Johnson that Kevin had lied to the accounting department, claiming personal dining and luxury items as business expenses for entertainment and gifts. During the investigation into the beer pouring incident, someone from the accounting department consulted Emily about the expenses, leading to the discovery of this fact. Subsequently, President Johnson and Emily reviewed all the receipts for expenses Kevin had claimed, uncovering a significant amount of embezzlement. The fact that President Johnson and Emily wanted to share with me was about Kevin's embezzlement. Despite being an executive with a presumably decent salary, Kevin had been dipping into company funds. However, seeing him adorned in such luxury brands, it somehow made sense. What you've done is embezzlement, a serious crime. Because of the deal-breaking incident and your embezzlement, you will have to leave the company. We'll also be divorcing, so prepare yourself, Emily declared, causing Kevin to panic and beg her. Please, not that. I'll return the embezzled money and work harder. Just reconsider the divorce, Kevin pleaded. However, Emily was unyielding, forcefully pushing Kevin away. Don't touch me. Leave now. I never want to see your face again. After Emily spoke, she turned away from Kevin. Seeing Emily was not swayed, Kevin then turned to me in desperation. Please, I'm begging you, convince Emily for me. If you can just reset the business deal, everything will work out. Let's forget about the beer incident and act like adults here. My divorce might be your fault, you know. Kevin, still not understanding what he did wrong, demanded from a position of superiority that I accept a business deal. I was so astonished by his audacity that I was at a loss for words. I shook my head and said, You really don't understand anything, do you? This isn't about that anymore. I can fulfill your request. If you're going to blame anyone, blame your own actions. Looking Kevin in the eyes as I said this, he collapsed in tears on the spot. He is possibly thinking crying might solve his problems. He kept glancing over at me, perhaps hoping for some sympathy. It's sad to see a person fall this low, beyond any hope of redemption. As I was contemplating what to do next, President Johnson said, "President Smith, I apologize for taking up your time today. We'll handle the rest. So please feel free to go." Following President Johnson's words, I left Company Y in their hands. As the door to the President's office closed behind me, I could hear President Johnson's angry voice, which gave me a sense of relief, and I returned to my company feeling refreshed. Later, I had the chance to hear about Kevin from Emily. Kevin and Emily ended up divorcing, and Kevin left Company Y. He repaid the embezzled money in full by taking out loans, so the police were not notified. Kevin, who had relied on Emily for everything including rent and living expenses, was kicked out of the house after the divorce. As a result, without a home or job, he found a live-in part-time job, but with debt repayments, he was left with almost no money. He occasionally contacted Emily, complaining about his poor lifestyle. Kevin, who used to look down on me for being poor, has now found himself in that very position. While I don't take pleasure in his misfortune, I can help but feel that what goes around comes around. Kevin's cronies also faced their own penalties and left the company, likely due to the uncomfortable atmosphere. It seems karma has caught up with each of them. As for me, I renegotiated and signed a new contract with Company Y. President Johnson and Emily have thanked me multiple times, but the business with Company Y is also beneficial for me. I hope to maintain a good relationship with Company Y moving forward. Somehow, through this incident, I've become friends with Emily. We've started going out for drinks, and she's become somewhat of a big sister figure to me. Lately, she's been concerned about me being of marriageable age but without a partner, and has offered to introduce me to someone soon. While it's a bit nosy, I've been so focused on work that I've nearly forgotten what dating is like. I'm a bit anxious, but also excited about the prospect of meeting someone new. Looking forward to a passable new encounter, I'm motivated to continue working hard today.